Good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is Ancient Irish Tales for today. And today's tale is the tale of Briceiu's feast. And again, most importantly, the tale of Briceiu's feast in the Uslter Cycle. We are obviously having help with reading the tale today. Okay, Briceiu's feast is one of the longest narratives of the Ulster Cycle. It exists in several variations, the oldest of which is based on an original composed possibly as early as the 8th century. Though somewhat marred in repetitions and contradictions, the story, taken as a whole, is one of the best in early Irish literature. It consists of a series of episodes describing various tests of valor which the three bravest warriors of Ulster, Cu Chulainn, Conall, and Ligor, undergo in order to determine who is the most worthy to receive the choicest portion of, a feast prepared by Briceiu of the poisoned tongue. The thriceties of the cycle and antiquity of motive around which the narrative centers is vouched for by, a Greek writer, who relates that the ancient Irish Celtic feasts are the choicest tidbit of the champion's portion, which was assigned to the bravest warrior present, whose pre-emergence was sometimes established by, a fight on the spot. Churu, who figures in several episodes, is a semi-supernatural being who probably belonged originally, not to the Ulster Cycle, but to the legendary history of the south of Ireland. So, as you can tell, this is going to be a longer story. So, my suggestion, grab a glass of mead, sit down, get comfortable by a nice cozy fire, drink a horn, pass it around, and buckle up. Let's see what happens in today's tale. Borkru Poison Tongue held a great feast for Concobar, Macnisa, and for, all of Ulstermen. The preparation of the feast took a whole year. For the entertainment of the guests, a spacious house was built by him. He erected it at Dun Rajua after the likeness of Red Basham and Imameka. Yet, it surpassed all the buildings of the period entirely for material, for artistic design, and, beauty of architecture. Its pillars and footings, splendid and costly, its carving and lineal work framed for magnificence, the house was made in this fashion on the plain of Tara's Mead Hall, having their 9 compartments from fire to well, each forming of a bronze 30-foot high, overlaid with gold. And in the forefront of the palace, a royal coach was, erected for Concobar's, high above those of the whole house. And it was set to, icumbrals and other precious stones, which shone with luster of gold and silver, radiant with every hue, making it like the night sky. Around it were placed the 12 conches of the 12 tribes of Ulster. The nature of the workmanship was on par with the material of its edifice. It took a wagon team to carry each beam, and the strength of 7 Ulstermen to fix each pole, while 30 of the chief artificers of Erin were employed on its erection and, engagement. Then a balcony was made by Briceiu on the level which the couch of Concobar, and as high as those heroes of valor. The decorations of its fittings were magnified, windows of glass were placed on each side of it, and one of those was above Briceiu's couch, so that he could view the hall from his seat, as he knew the Ulstermen would not allow him within. When Briceiu had finished building the hall, and, the balcony supplying it, were both quilts and blankets, beds and pillows, providing meat and drink, so that nothing was lacking, neither in the furnishings nor food. He straightway went to Emmon to meet Concobar and the nobles of Ulster. It fell upon the day when there was a gathering of Ulstermen in Emma, and, once made welcome, he was seated by the shoulder of Concobar. Briceiu dressed himself, and, as a body of Ulstermen, "Come with me," said Briceiu, "to partake a banquet with me." "Gladly," said Concobar, "if that place please the men of Ulster." Fergus with Rogue of the nobles of Ulster made the answer, "No, for if we go, our dead will outnumber the living, while Briceiu has encased us against each other. Yet ye come not, worse shall ye fare, said Briceiu. "What then?" asked Concobar. "If the Ulstermen go not with thee?" "I will stir up strife between the kings and the leaders of the heroes of valor and the yeomen until they slay one another man for man. For if they come not to me to share my feast, that shall not do to please thee," said Concobar. "I will stir up the enmity between the father and the son that was, come to martial slaughter. If I do not succeed in doing so, I will make a quarrel between mother and daughter. And if that does not succeed, I will set the Ulstermen women at variance, so that they come to deadly blows, till their breasts become loathsome and putrid." "Surely it's better to come," said Fergus. "Do ye straightway take counsel with the chief Ulsterman and Sasha son of Erlin? Unless we take counsel against this Briceiu mischief, will be the consequence," said Concobar. Thereupon all the Ulster nobles assembled in council. They discussed the matter, while Shosha counselled them thus: "Take hostages from Briceiu, since ye have to go with him, and set 8 swordsmen about him, so as not to compel him to retire from the house as soon as he has laid out the feast." Forbin, son of Concobar, brought Briceiu their reply, and, explained the whole matter. "It is happily arranged," said Briceiu. The men of Ulster straightway set out from Emmon, host, battalion, and company under the king, chieftain, and leader. Excellent and admirable they marched of the brave and valiant heroes to the palace. The hostages of nobles had gone secretly on his behalf, and Briceiu accordingly considered how he should manage to set the Ulstermen at variance. He deliberately and self-scrutiny being ended, he betook himself the presence of Ligur, the triumphant son of Conrad MacLeish. "Hail now, Logar the triumphant, thou mighty mallet of Brig, thou hot hammer of myth, red flame, thunderbolt, thou victorious warrior of Ulster. What hinders the championship of Ulster being thine always?" "If I so choose, it shall be mine," said Logar. "Be thine the sovereignty of the nobles of Erin," said Briceiu, "if only thou act as I advise." "I will indeed," said Logar. "Sooth, if the champion's portion of my house be thine, the championship of Erin is thine forever. The champion's portion of my house is worth contesting, for it is not the portion of a fool's house. Belonging to it is the cauldron, life, and generous wine, with room enough for thee and the valiant heroes of Ulster. Furthermore, a 7-year-old boar not has entered its mouth since it was little save flesh milk and final springtime curds and sweet milk in the summer, the kernel of nuts and wheat in autumn, beef and broth in winter. A cow lured full 7-year-old since it was little calf near heifer, nor twig lips it past its lips. Naught but sweet milk and herbs, mellowed hay and corn, add to this 50 cake of wheat cooked in honey. 25 bushels, and that was supplied for these 50 cakes, 4 cakes each from each bushel. Such is the champion's portion of my house. And, since thou art the best hero among the men of Ulster, it is but just give it to thee, and so I wish it. But at the end of the day, when the feast is spread out, let the charioteer get up, and it is to him the champion's portion will be given. Among them shall be dead men if it is not done so, said Logsberg. Briceiu laughed at that, for it pleased him well. When he had done inciting Logar the Triumphant to enmity, Briceiu went to Conall the Victorious. Hail to thee, Conall the Victorious! Thou art hero victorious in all of combats. Great and victorious thou hast already scored over the heroes of Ulster. By the time the Ulstermen go into foreign bonds, thou art the 3 days and 3 nights in advance over many a fjord. Thou protestest their rear when returning, so that the assault may not spring past thee, nor through thee, nor over thee, when should hinder the champion's portion of Emmenmacha belong to thine always. Though great is treachery with regard to Logbear, he showed twice as much with Conall the Victorious. When he satisfied himself with inciting Conall Victorious to quarrel, he went to Cu Chulainn. Hail to thee, Cu Chulainn, thou victor of Breg, thou bright banner of Liffey, daring Emmen, beloved wives and of maidens. For thee today, Cu Chulainn, is no nickname, for thou art the champion of the Ulstermen. Thou wardest off the great feuds and fortes, thou seekest justice for each man of them. Thou attainest alone of what all Ulstermen fail in. All the men of Ulster acknowledge thy bravery, thy valour, and thou achievements surpassing theirs. What meaneth therefore on leaving the champion's portion for someone else of the men of Ulster, since no one of the men of Erin is capable of contesting it against thee? By the gods of my tribe, said Cu Chulainn, his head he will lose who comes in contest with me. Therefore Briceiu served himself from them and followed the host, as if no contention had been made among the heroes. Whereupon they entered Briceiu's stronghold, and each one occupied his couch therein, king, prince, noble, yeoman, younger hero. The half hall was well set apart for Concobar and his retinue of valiant Ulster heroes. The other half was reserved for the ladies of Ulster, attending on the Megan, daughter of Uslter, wife of Concobar. Those who attended on Concobar were the chief Ulster warriors, with a body of youths and entertainers, while the feast was being prepared for them. The musicians and players performed. The moment Briceiu spread the feast with his savouries, he was ordered by the hostages to leave the hall. They straightway got up from there with their drawn swords in their hands to expel him. Whereupon Briceiu and his wife went out on the balcony, and as he arrived at the threshold of the stronghold, he called out that the champion portion, such as it is not a portion of the fool's house. Do ye give it to the Ulster hero ye'd prefer for valour? And then he left them. Then the waiters got up to serve the food. The charioteer of Logar the Triumphant, that is, Single Mac Roburg, rose up and said to the distributors, Give Logar the Triumphant the champion's portion, which is by you, for he alone is entitled to it before the other young heroes of Ulster. Then Ide Mac Rogar, charioteer for Conall Victorious, got up and spoke to like effect. And Log Mac Rothborough spoke as follows. Bring it to Cu Chulainn. It is no disgrace for all the Ulstermen to give it to him that he is the most valiant among you. That's not true, said Conall Victorious and Logar the Triumphant. They got up on the floor and donned their shields and seized their swords. They hew at one another until half the hall was an atmosphere with fire and the clash of sword and spear edge. One the other half was a white sheet from all the enamel of shields. Great alarm got hold of the stronghold. The valiant heroes shook Concobar himself, and Fergus MacRory were furious on seeing the injury and injustice of the two men attacking one. namely Conall victorious and Ligo triumph attacking Cu Chulainn. There was one among the Ulstermen who dared separate them. There was no one among the Ulstermen who dared separate them. Until Scantia spoke to Concobar. Part the men, he said. Thereupon Concobar and Fergus intervened, and the combatants immediately let drop their hands to their sides. Execute my wish, said Sancha. Your will shall be obeyed, they responded. My wish then, said Sancha, is tonight to divide the champions' portions there among all the host, and after that decide, with reference to it, according to the will of El Mesha, for it is accounted unlucky among the Ulstermen to close this assembly unless the matter is adjudged in Cretin. The feasting was then resumed, and they made a circle about the fire, and, well, got drunken and merry. He'd say it, but that's normal for Irish. Briceiu, however, and his queen were in the balcony. From their couch to the condition of the palace was visible to him. And, well, how things were going. He exercised his mind in how he should conceive to get the woman to quarrel as he had the men. When Briceiu had done searching his mind, he chanced he could have wished that Philman MacHart came from the stronghold with 50 women in her train, in jovial mood. Briceiu ordered her to come past him. Hail to thee tonight, wife of Uslter the triumphant. Philman Freshart had no nickname for thee, with respect to the excellence of form and of wisdom and of lineage. Concobar, king of the province of Erin, as thy father, Logo the triumphant, the husband. I should deem it by small honour to thee that any of the Ulster women should take precedence of thee in entering the banquet hall. Only at the heel should all the Ulster women tread. And if thou comest first into the hall tonight, the sovereignty of the queenship shalt thou enjoy over all the ladies of Ulster forever. Fildam at that takes a leap over the 3 ridges for the hall. Thereafter came Lochwood, daughter of Egon MacDurroch, wife of Conall the Victorious. Briceiu addressed her, saying, Hail to thee, Lochthbra, for thee has no nickname. Thou art the darling and pet of all mankind on account of thy splendour of thy lustre. And as far as thy husband has surpassed all heroes of mankind in valour and calmness, as far as thou distressest thyself among the women of Ulster. Though great the dearest applied in the case of Peardam, he applied twice as much in the case of Lombard. Then Emer came out, with 100 women in her train. Greeting and hail to thee, Emer, Donna Formac, and wife of the best man in Erin. Emer, of the fair-haired, has no nickname for thee. Erin's king and princes contend for thee in jealous rivalry. As the sun surpasses the stars of heaven, so dost thou outshine the woman of the whole world in the form and shape and lineage, in youth and beauty and elegance, in good name and wisdom and address. Thou great is the deed, great is this deceit in the cases that other ladies, in that Emer he used thrice as much. The 3 companies thereupon went out until they met at a spot 3 ridges from the hall. None of them knew that Briceiu had incited them on against each other. To the hall they straightway returned, even easy and graceful in their carriage on the first ridge. Scarcely did one of them rise a foot before the other. But on the ridge following, their steps were shorter and quicker. On the ridge next to the house, it was difficult to each to keep up with the others, so they raised their robes around their hips and completed attempt to go first into the hall. For what Briceiu had said to each of them was in regard to the other was that whatever entered first should be queen of the whole province. An amount of confusion then occupied by the competition, as if they were nose-15 chariots approaching. The whole strong-haired shook, and the warriors sprang to their arms and tried to kill one another within. Stay, said Sencha. There are no enemies who have come. It is Briceiu who has set quarrelling The women who have gone out by the gods of my tribe, unless this door be closed against them, are dead, will outnumber the living. Thereupon the doorkeepers closed the doors. Emer, daughter of Formac, wife of Cu Chulainn, by reason of her speed, outran the others and put her back against the door, and straightway called upon the doorkeepers before the other ladies came, so that the men within got up, each of them opened the door for, well, his own wife, that she might be the first to come in. Bad outlook tonight, said Concobar. He struck the silver scepter that was in his hand against the bronze pillar of the couch, and the company sat down. Stay, said Sancha. This is not a warfare of arms that shall be held here. It will be warfare of words. Each woman went out under the protection of her husband, and then followed the Ulster woman. Then what followed were the Ulster woman war of words. The series of rhetorical speeches in which the women enunciate the virtues of their respective husband has been omitted. Thus did the men in the hall behave on hearing the loudery address of the women. Logo and Connell each sprang into his hero's light and broke a stave of place at his like level with themselves, so that in this way their wives came in. Cu Chulainn upheaved the palace just over against his bed until the stars of the heaven were to be seen underneath the wattle. By that opening came, his own wife, with 100 of her attendees in the train, so also 100 in waiting upon the others twain. Other ladies could not be compared to Emer. Well, no one at all was to be liked to Emer's husband. Thereupon Cu Chulainn let the palace down until 7 feet of the whittled entered the ground. The whole stronghold shook, and Briceiu's barrows laid flat to the earth in such a way that Briceiu and his queen toppled down it until they fell into a ditch in the middle of the courtyard among the dogs. Woe is me, cried Briceiu. He has hastily gotten, enemies have come into the palace. He took turns around and saw how it was, lopsided and inclined an entry to one side. He, wringing his hands, betook himself within and bespattered that none of the Ulstermen could recognize him. Then, from the floor of the house of Briceiu, made speech. Alas, that I have prepared you a feast, O Ulstermen. My house is more to me than all my other possessions. Upon you there is a taboo to drink and eat or sleep until you leave my house as you found it upon your arrival. Thereupon the valiant Ulstermen went out of the house and tried to tug it. But they did not raise it so much that they even went down beneath and passed under the earth. The matter was difficult to the Ulstermen. I have no suggestion for you, said Sencha, except that you entreated of him who has left it lopsided to set it upright. Whereupon the men of Ulster told Cu Chulainn to restore the house to its upright position. Then Briceiu made a speech. O king of the house of Erin, if thou set not straight and erect, none of the world can do so. All the Ulstermen then enacted Cu Chulainn to solve the difficulty. That the banqueteers might be not lacking for food and ale, Cu Chulainn got up and, tried to lift the house at a tug and failed. A distortion upon got hold of him, whilst a drop of blood was at the root of each single hair. He drew his hair into his hand. And so he looked above, and his dark yellow curls seemed as if they had been shorn with scissors. Taking upon himself the motion of the milestone, he strained himself until a warrior's foot could find room between each pillar of the ribs. His natural resourcefulness and fiery vigor returned to him, and then he heaved the house aloft and set it, so that it reached his former level. Thereafter, the consumption of the feast was pleasant to them, with the kings and chieftains on the side around about Concobar the illustrious and noble High King of Ulster. Again, it was their hap to quarrel about the champion's portion. Concobar with the nobles of Ulster interposed with the view of judging between the heroes. Go to Churo MacDirry, a man who will undertake to intervene, said Concobar. I accept that, said Cu Chulainn. I agree, said Logar. Let us go then, said Conall the Victorious. Let the houses be brought thy chariot yoked, O'Connell, said Cu Chulainn. Woe is me, said Conall. Everyone, said Cu Chulainn, knows the circumstances of the horses and thy unsteadiness of thy going and thy turnout. The chariot's moment is most heavy. Each of the two wheels rise turf in every way big chariot careers. So that when the space of a year there is well-marked tract easily recognized by the warriors of Ulster. Dost thou hear this? Hear that, Logar, said Conall. Woe is me, said Logar. But I'm not to blame for the reproach, for I'm nimble at crossing fjords, and more breast and strong as spears, outstripping the warriors of Ulster. Put not me, patience of kings and champions, against the single chariots in straight but difficult places, in woods and one confines, until the champions of a single chariot tries not to career before me. Thereupon Logar had his chariot yoked, and he leapt into it and drove over the plain of Two Forks, and the gap of the Watch, and the ford of Culprit, over the fjord of Vorgu, and Rowan Meadow, and the two oxen Fuse, and Argmarth, and meeting of the two ways, past Domburg, across Megsters, westward, up the slope of Berg. The dim, dark, heavy mist overtook him, confusing him in such that this was impossible for him to far further. Let us stay here, said Logar to his charioteer, until the mist clears. Logar aligned with the chariot and gilded the horses in the meadow that they was near at hand. While there, the girlie saw a huge giant approach them. Not beautiful in his appearance, broad-shouldered and fat-mouthed, with a sack eyes and a burly face, ugly, wrinkled with brushy eyebrows, hideous and horrible and strong, stubborn and violent, and haughty, fat and protruding with big sinews and strong forearms, bold, audacious, and unclothed. A sham-black patch of hair on him, and a dun covering about him, and a tunic over it, to a ball of his rump. On his feet are old tattered bogs, and on his back a ponderous club-like wheel shaft of a mill. Whose horses are these, girlie? He said, and he grizzled furiously at them. The horses of Logar the Triumphant. Ah, yes, a fine fellow is he. And thus he spoke and brought down his club on the girlie and gave him a blow from top to toe. The girlie gave cry, whereupon Logar came up. What is this you are doing to the lad? Said Logar. It is, by the way, a penalty for damage to the meadow, said the giant. I will come myself then, said Logar, and then struggled until Logar fell to Emin, leaving his horse and girlie in arms. Not long after, Conall the Victorious took the same way and arrived at the plain where the druidical mist overtook Logar. The like hideous black, dark cloud overtook Conall the Victorious, so that he was unable to see either heaven or earth. Conall thereupon leapt out of his gore, unharnessed, in the horses, and in the same meadow, not long after, he saw the same giant coming towards him. He asked whose servant he was. I am the servant of Conall the Victorious, he said. Good man is he, said the giant, and he raised his hands and gave the girlie a blow from top to toe. The fellow yelled, then came Conall. He and the giant came to close quarters. Stronger were the wrestling turns of the giant that Conall fled as Legender had done, and left behind his charioteer and his horses, and came to Emin. Now, Cu Chulainn then went by the same way till he came to the same spot, and that little dark mist overtook him and fell upon the two preceding. Cu Chulainn sprang down, and Log brought the horses into the meadow. He had not long to wait until he saw the same man coming towards him. The giant asked him whose servant he was. "I am the servant of Cu Chulainn." "Ah, a good man is he," said the giant, playing him with the club. Yog yelled, then Cu Chulainn arrived. He and the giant came to close quarters, and neither rained bows upon each other. The giant was worst. He forfeited horses and charioteer, and Cu Chulainn brought him along with him his fellows' horses and charioteers, and accoutrements, till he reached Emmen in triumph. "Thine is the champion's portion," said Boros to Cu Chulainn, "and to the others, well, I know from your deeds that they are no way on par with Cu Chulainn." "Not true, Briceiu," they said, "for we know it is one of his friends of the ferry road that came upon him to play mischief with us, took horses to regard to the championship. We shall not forego our claim on that account." The men of Ulster with Concobar and Fergus failed to effect a settlement. And while the conclusion of the nobles of Concobar's following arrival was that to the company heroes to have a difficulty adjusting to the abode of El Macmorth, and a Mab and Kraken and Ali were referenced to the champion's portion, and while the mutual rival of women, fine and lovely and majestic the march of the Ulstermen to Corkin. Cu Chulainn, however, remained behind the host, entertaining the Ulster ladies, performing the 9 feats with apples and 9 knives, and such the wise did not interfere with the other. Log MacRocra went on to speak to him about feasted and said, "You sorry simpleton, for your valour and bravery has passed away. The champion's portion has gone from you. The Ulstermen have reached Crechen long since." "Indeed they have not all perceived it, my lord. Yoke us the chariot then," said Cu Chulainn. Log accordingly yoked it off and started. By the time the Ulstermen had reached Magborg, Cu Chulainn, having been incited by his charioteer, travelled with such speed from Donrugel and the grey of Maca and the black Sleegan racing his chariot across the whole province. The charioteer across Megburg, and the third chariot arrived first in Kraken. The virtue of the swiftness and impetuous speed at which all the valiant Ulstermen reached Kraken under the lead of Concobar, and, while his body of chiefs, a great shaking seized Kraken, till the war arms fell upon the wilds of the ground, seizing likewise the entire hosts of the strong words, till the men of the royal keep were like rushes in the stream. Meb upon them spoke. "Since the day I looked at home in Cu Chulainn, I've never heard such thunder, there being no clouds." Thereupon Fibra, daughter of Al and Mav, went to the balcony over the high porch of the stronghold. "Mother dear," she said, "I see a chariot coming along the plain." "Describe it," said Mav. "Its form, appearance, and style, and color of horse, how the hero looks, and how the chariot of courses." Here follows is the conventional description in highly embodied rhetoric of the chariots and personal appearance of Logar and Colno. This, as well as the description of Cu Chulainn's chariot, is omitted. The narrative is resumed with the description of Cu Chulainn himself, long famous in Gaelic literacy, men and professional storytellers. The chariot, a dark, melancholy man, comest, of the man of Erin. Around him soft crimson pleasing tunic fastened across his breast, where it stands open with a salmon brooch of inlaid gold, against which his bosom heaves, beating in full strokes. A long-sleeved linen kirtle with a white hood embroidered red with flaming gold. Set in each of his eyes 8 dragon gemstones. His 2 cheeks blue, white, and blood red. He emits sparks of fire and burning breath, with rays of love in his look. A shower of pearls, it seems, has fallen into his mouth. each of his 2 eyebrows as black as the side of a black spit. On his 2 thighs rests a golden hilted sword fastened to a copper frame of the chariot is a blood-red spear with a sharp, mettlesome blade on a shaft of wood well fitted to his hand. Over both his shoulders a crimson shield with a rim of silver chased figures of animals and gold. He leaps the hero's salmon leap into the air and does many swift feats besides. Such is the chief of the chariot royal before him that the chariot is a charioteer, a very slender, tall, much freckled man. On his head a very curly, bright red hair, well filled with bronze upon his brow, which prevents his hair from falling over his face. On both sides of his head, panes of gold confine his hair. A shoulder mantle about him with sleeves opening at the 2 elbows. In his hand, a goad of red gold, which he guides the horses. Truly, it is a drop before a shower. We recognize the man from this description, said Mav. An ocean of fury, a wail rages. A fragment of flame and fire. A bare, majestic, and grandly moving bellow. A beast of mangering anger. In a crash of glorious battle, through the hostile foe he leaps. Oh, shout the fury of doom! A terrible bear, he is death to the herd of cattle. Feet upon feet, head upon he piles. Praise ye the hardy one, he who is completely victor, as fresh malt into the ground, as the mill should be ground by Cu Chulainn. By the gods of my people, said Merib, I swear that as being the fury Cu Chulainn comes on us, like a mill of 10 spokes grinds very hulled malt, so he alone will grind us into a mound of gravel, should the whole province attend on us and Kraken, unless his fury and violence are subdued. How do they come this time, said Mav. Wrist to wrist, palm to palm, tunic to tunic they advance, shield to shield, frame to frame, shoulder to shoulder, band, wood to wood, ear to ear. Thus they all are. Fond mother. As a thunderwind crashing on the roof watch the speed changers dash, as the heavy seas with the storms are shaking, the earth in turn they pound. Aaron it vibrates, they strike. Their strength and weight are like, their name is noble, no ill fame. Then Mev's speech. Woman to woman them, and many half naked, full breasted and bare, the beautiful, numerous bring vats of cold water, where wanting beds and ready for rest bring fine food, and no scantity but excellent strong ale, and sound a well malted warriors keep. Let the gates of the strongholds be set open the enclosure. The battalion that is rushing won't kill us, I hope. Thereupon Mav went out by the high door to the palace of the court, and thrice 50 maidens in her train, and 3 vats of cold water for the 3 valiant heroes in front of the hosts, ordered to alleviate their heat. Choice was straightway given them, so that to discern whether the house apiece should be allotted to them, or one house amongst the 3. To each house apart, said Cu Chulainn. Thereafter they preferred thrice 50 girls and were brought into the house. Spitted up the bed in surprising magnificence. Forbear the preference to any other was brought by Cu Chulainn into the apartment where he himself was. On the arrival of the Ulstermen, Al and Mav, with their whole household, went and bade them welcome. We are pleased, said Sanchez, son of Al, responding, Thereupon the Ulstermen came into the stronghold, and the palace is left to them unrecounted. Vice, 7 circles and 7 compartments from fire, partition, and bronze fondlings, carved of red yew. 3 strips of bronze in the arching of the house, which was oak and carving of shingles. It is the 12 windows with glass openings. The couch of Al and Mav and the counter of the houses were silver footings and stripes of bronze round it, with a silver wand by partition facing Al, that he would reach the mighty lips of the house, so that check the inmates' uncertainty. The Ulster heroes went round one door of the palace to another, and the musicians played while the guests were being prepared for. Such was the spaciousness of the house that had the room of host valiant heroes for the whole province in its return to Concobar. Moreover, Concobar and Fergus Merrick were in Al's apartment, with 9 valiant Ulster heroes besides. Great feasts were then prepared for them, and they were then at the end of 3 days, there to the end of 3 days and 3 nights. Thereafter Al retired of Concobar with his Ulster attire, when were prepares for his visit. Scantch relays the matter on the account of which they had come, vice the 3 heroes' rivalry to the champion's portion, and, well, the ladies' rivalry as the presence of feats. They could not stand being judged by anyone else than here by thee. Adele was silent and not a happy mood. Indeed, it is not to me this decision should be given as to the champion's portion, unless it is done from hatred. There really is no better judge, said Shancha. Well, said Odo, I require time to consider. For that, then, 3 days and 3 nights suffice for me, said Elul. That would not forfeit friendship, answered Sasha. The Ulstermen straightway bid farewell, being satisfied that they left their blessings with Al and Mav and their curse with Briceiu, for it was he who incited them to strife, and then departed the territory of Mav, leaving have only left Lolger and Colin and Cu Chulainn to be judged by Al. The like supper as before was given to each heroes every night. One night, as the portion was assigned to them, 3 cats from the cave of Kraken were let loose to attack them. It is thus 3 beasts of magic, Conan and Lolger made for the rafters, leaving their food with the beasts. In that wise they slept until the morning row. Cu Chulainn fed not from the beast which was attacking him. When it stretched its neck out for eating, Cu Chulainn gave a blow with his sword on the beast's head. But the blade galled it off as if it were stone. Then the cat sat itself down. Under the circumstances, Cu Chulainn neither ate nor slept, but he kept his place. As soon as it was early morning, the cats were gone. In such a condition were the 3 heroes seen on the morrow. Does not the trial suffice for adjourning you, said Ale? By no means. It's not against the beasts we are surviving, but against men. Al having gone to his chamber, set back against the wall, he was disquieted in mind, for he took the difficulty that faced him to be fraught with danger. He neither ate nor slept till the end of 3 days and 3 nights. Coward! Mav then called him. If you do not decide, I will. Difficult for me to judge them. It is a misfortune for one to have to do it. There is no difficulty. For Lolger and Colin and Conrac are different as bronze and white bronze, and Conor and Conrac and Cu Chulainn are as different as white bronze and red gold. It is then that she has pondered her device, that Lolger and the Triumphant was summoned to Mav. Welcomed, O Lolger the Triumphant, she said. It is to me to give thee champion's portion. We assign thee the sovereignty of heroes of Arran. From this time forth, and the champion's portion, and a cup of bronze, which a bird chased silver on at the bottom. In preference to everyone else, take it with the token of award. No one else is to see it, until at day's end thou hast come to the red branch of Concobar, on the champion's portion being exhibited among you. Then shalt you bring forth the cup in the presence of all Ulster nobles. Moreover, the champion's portion is therein. None of the valiant Ulster heroes will dispute it further with thee. For the thing thou art to take away with thee shall be a token of genuineness in estimation of all Ulstermen. That upon the cup, when it's full of luscious wine, will be given to Logar the Triumphant. On the floor of the palace he has swallowed contest and drought. Now you have the feast of a champion, said Mav. I wish you may enjoy it 100 years and at the head of Ulster. Longo thereupon bade farewell, then Connachar was likewise summoned. Welcome, said Mav. O Connachar, proper it is to give thee the champion's portion with a cup of white bronze besides, having a bird on the bottom of it chased in gold. Therefore the cup was given to Conall with its full and luxurious wine. Conall bid farewell, and Herd was sent forth to fetch Cu Chulainn. Come to speak with the king and queen, said a messenger. Cu Chulainn at the time was busy playing chess with Log MacRobra, his own charioteer. No mocking, said. I may try your lies on some other fool. He heard one of the chessmen and pierced the center of the herald's brain. That's impressive. One of the chess pieces thrown and pierced the guy's brain. He got his death blow therefrom, and fell between Al and Mav. Woe is me, said Mav. Sorely doth Cu Chulainn woke on up his fury when he fit rage upon him. Whereupon Maeve got up and came to Cullen and put her 2 arms around his neck. Try a lie upon another, said Cu Chulainn. Glorious, son of Ulstermen and famed heroes of Erin. It is no lie that it is your liking where we are concerned. Were all Erin's heroes to come to thee by preference, we would grant the quest, for in regard to fame, bravery, valor, distinction, youth, and glory, the men of Erin acknowledge the superiority. Cu Chulainn got up. He accompanied Mav into the palace, and Ailill built him one welcome. A cup of gold was given him, full of luxurious wine, and having on the bottom of the bird's chest in precious stone. With it, in preference to everyone else, there given to him a lump as big as his 2 eyes, a dragon stone. Now you have the feast of a champion, said Mav. I wish you may enjoy it 100 years and at the head of all Ulster heroes. Moreover, it is our verdict. And Ailill and Mav, inasmuch as thou art not to be compared with the Ulster warriors, neither is thy wife to be compared with their women. Nor is too much to think that she should always precede all the Ulster ladies when entering Mead Hall. At that Cu Chulainn drank 1 draught in his full cup, and then bade farewell to the king and queen and the whole household. Thereafter he followed his charioteer. My plan, said Mav to Ailill, is to keep those 3 heroes with us again tonight, and to test them further. Do as thou is right, said Ailill. The men were then disdained and brought to Crechin, and their horses unyoked. Their choice food was given to them for their horses, and Conall and Lurg told them to give oats to 2 years old to theirs, but Cu Chulainn chose barley grain for his. They slept there that night. The women were appointed among them. Fairber, with a train of 50 damsels, was brought to the palace of Cu Chulainn. Sab the Eloquent, another daughter of El, and Mav, and 50 maidens in attendance, was ushered into the presence of Conall Cairnich. Consid, daughter of Cacmach, and 50 damsels along her, was brought in the presence of Logar the Triumphant. Moreover, Mav herself was accustomed to visit the couch of Cu Chulainn. They slept there one night. On the morrow they arose early in the morning and went to the house where the youths were performing the wheel feat. Then Logar seized the wheel until it reached half of the side wall. Upon the youths laughed and cheered him. It was in reality a jeer, but something Logar and shout of applause. Conall then took the whole wheel was on the ground. He tossed it as high as a ridgepole of the hall. The youths raised a shout at that. It seemed Conall that this was a shout of applause and victory. To the youths, it was a shout of scorn. Then Cu Chulainn took the wheel. It was in midair, he caught it, carried it aloft till it cast the ridgepole from off the hall. The wheel went into a man's culprit on the ground in the outside enclosure. The youths raised a shout of applause and triumph over Cu Chulainn's case. It seemed to Cullen, however, that it was a laugh of scorn and ridicule that they went on. Cu Chulainn then sought out the wheel and took thrice 50 needles from them. These he tossed one after another. Each needle went into the eye of the other until there was wise only needle in her own hand. The young warriors praised Cu Chulainn, whereupon they bid farewell to the king and queen and the household as well. On arrival, Logan Conall and Cu Chulainn at Emain the heroes of Ulster ceased their discussions and their babblings and fell to eat the enjoying themselves. It was Uslter Cycle, father of Cu Chulainn himself, who that night attended upon the Ulstermen. Moreover, Concobar's ladder vat was filled for him. The portion having been brought in their present, the waiters began to serve. But at the outset, they withheld the champion's portion for distribution. "Why not give the champion's portion?" said Dolworth Chieferton. "To some one of the heroes, those three have not returned from the king's crachin, bringing no sure token with them. Thereby, the champion's portion may be assigned to one of them." Thereupon Logo Triumphant got up and lifted on high his bronze cup, having silver bird chest in the bottom. "The champion's portion is mine," he said, "and none may contest it with me." "It is not," said Conall. "Not alike are the tokens we brought off with us. Yours is a cup of bronze, whereas mine is a cup of white bronze. And from the difference between the champion's portion clearly belongs to me." "It belongs to neither of you," said Cu Chulainn. As he got up and spoke, "You have brought no token that procures you the championship portion, yet the king and queen whom you visited were loathed in the thick distress in intestify and strife, but no less than your deserts have you received at their hands. The champion's portion remains with me, seeing I have brought a token distinguished above all the rest." He then lifted on high a cup of red gold, having a bird chased on the bottom of it, in its present precious dragon stone, the size of 2 eyes. All the Ulster nobles and the train of Concobar MacNisa saw it. "Therefore it is I," Cu Chulainn said, "who deserve the champion's portion, provided I have fair play." "To thee we will award it," said Concobar and Fergus, and the Ulster nobles as well. "By the verdict of Al and Mav, the champion's portion is yours." At this point, there is introduced a short episode in which the three competitors goes on to be tested in strange personages called Ilkul. The scene then shifts to a banqueting hall of Concobar. "I swear, by my gods, my people's gods, that," said Logo the Triumphant, "that Conall the Victorious, that the cup that thou hast brought is purchased of the jewels at the treasures of your possession, for you've given Al and Mav for it in order to defeat not only on record against you, but the champion's portion might be given to no one else by preference. By my people's gods, the judgment shall not stand. The champion portion is not yours." They then sprang one after the other, and their swords drawn. Straightway Concobar and Fergus intervened, whereupon they let down their hands and sheathed their swords. "Hold," said Sancha. "Do as I bid." "We will," they said. The heroes are then sent to Borrow MacBran, Yellow Sun Fair, and him the Oath MacOlan, Terror, son of the Great Fear. The episode of Alan consists of short version of the beheading incident, which is recited in more detail later in a part called The Champion's Covenant. The Ulstermen advised them to go to Chothwall for judgment. To that they agreed. On the morrow, the three heroes, Cu Chulainn, Conall, and Leg, set off to Choiry's stronghold. Catholic Churo. They unyoked their carts at the gate of the hold and entered the court. Whereupon Valned, MacNine's daughter, wife of Colin MacGraw, bid them warm welcome. That night on their arrival, Colin MacRoch was not at home. But knowing they would come, he consulted his wife regarding the heroes until he should return from his eastern expedition into Schistia. From the age of 7 years old, where he took up arms until his death, Chura had not only reddened his sword in Erin, or ever in the food of Erin past his lips, nor could Erin retain him for his heightened renown and rank, overbearing in fury, strength, and gallantry. His wife acted accordingly to his wish, in a matter of bathing and washing, providing them with refreshing drinks and beds most excellent. And they liked it well. When bedtime came, she told them that each was to take his night watch in the fort until Chirrus should return. And moreover, thus said Chirrus that you take your turn watching according to seniority. In whatever quarter of the globe Chirrus should happen to be, every night he chanted a spell over his stronghold, so that the fort revolved as swiftly as a millstone. Again, it was never to be found after sunset. The first night, Ligo the Champion took his watch. Inasmuch as he was the eldest son of the three, he kept watch until the later part of the night. He saw a giant approaching them from far as eye he could see westwards. Accidentally huge and ugly and horrible, Ligo thought of him. For in height it seemed to him that he reached the sky, and a reflection of the sea was visible between his legs. Thus did he come, his hands full of stripped oaks, each would form a burden for a wagon-smith team of 6, and whose root was not stroked off and repeated after a single sword stroke. One of the stakes he cast at Logar, who let it past him. Twice or thrice he repeated it, but the stroke reached neither the skin nor the shield of Logar. Then Logar hurled a spear at him, but it did not hit him. The giant stretched his hand toward Logar. Such it was the length that reached across 3 ridges that were between them, and as they were throwing at each other, thus at his grasp the giant seized him. Though Logar was big and imposing, he fit like a year-old child into the clutch of his opponent, who then ground him between his 2 palms, as a chessman is turned to the grove. In that state, half dead, the giant tossed him out over the fort, so that he fell in the mire and ditch at the gate. The fort had no opening there, and the other men and inmates of the bold thought Logar had leapt outside over the fort as a challenge for the other men to do likewise. There they were until day's end. When the night's watch began, Conal went out a sentry, for he was older than Cu Chulainn. Everything, of course, as did with Logar at the first night. The third night, Cu Chulainn went on watch. That night, 3 greys of Chancel Uber and 3 ox feeders of Berg and 3 sons of Big Fish and Seren met by opponent to plunder the stronghold. This was the night on which it was foretold that the serpent of the lake by the fort would devour the whole population of that hold, man and beast. Cu Chulainn were watching through the night, and many uneasy forebodings. When at midnight came, he heard a terrific noise drawing near him. "Hola! Hola!" Cu Chulainn shouted. "Who's there? If friends they be, let them not stir. If foes, let them flee." Then they raised the terrific shout at him, whereupon Cu Chulainn sprang upon them, so that the 9 of them fell dead on the earth. He heaped their heads in discard and sent watch and resumed his post. Another 9 shouted at him in like manner. Anything he killed 3 9s, making 1 cairn for them with the heads as accoutrements. While he was there and far into the night, tired and sad and weary, he heard a rising on the lake on high, as if becoming booming of a very heavy sea. However, deep his dejection, he could not resist going to see what caused the great noise he heard. Then he perceived the upheaving monster, and it seemed to him that 30 cubits of cultivator above the loch. It raised itself on high into the air and sprang towards the fort, opening its mouth so that one of the halls could go into its gullet. Then Cu Chulainn called his mind to swooping feet. Springing up high, he was as swift as a wandering riddle right around the monster. He entwined his two arms around its neck, stretched his hand into its gullet, and tore out the monster's heart, and cast it from him on the ground. Then the beast fell from the air and rested on the earth. After having sustained a blow on the shoulder, Cu Chulainn then piled it with his sword, and hacked it to bits, and took his head with him to the sentry seat along with the other heaps of skulls. While there, depressed and miserable in the morning dawn, he saw a giant approaching. "Bad night," says he. "It'll be worse for thee, thou oaf," said Cu Chulainn. Then the giant cast one of the branches at Cu Chulainn, who let it pass him. He repeated it twice and thrice, but it reached neither skin nor shield of Cu Chulainn. Cu Chulainn then hurled his spear at the giant, and it didn't reach him. Whereupon the giant stretched out his hand towards Cu Chulainn to grip him as he had the others. Cu Chulainn leapt the hero's salmon leap, and called the mind of his swooping feet, with his sword drawn over the giant's head. As swift as a hare he was, and in mid-morning circling round the giant, until he made a water wheel of him. "Life for life, Cu Chulainn," he said. "Give me my 3 wishes," said Cu Chulainn. "Thou shalt have them as they come at breath," he said. "The sovereignty of Erin's heroes be henceforth mine, the champion's portion without dispute, the prudence of my wife over the Ulster ladies forever." "It shall be thine," he said at once. Then he who had been talking with Cu Chulainn vanished. For he knew not whether then the Cal amused himself just to leap. His fellows had leapt over the fort, and then leapt a big broad high. Moreover, it seemed to him that he was by leaping that the valiant heroes had gone over it. He tried it twice and failed. "Alas," said Cu Chulainn, "my exertions for this champion's purse have exhausted me, and now I lose it through not being able to take the leap the others took." And thus he mused. He aside the following feat, that he would spring backwards in midair and shoot the distance of the fort, and then he would rebound from there until his forehead struck the fort. Then he would spring high until all within the fort was visible to him, and again he would strike up his knees on the earth, owning the pleasure and vehemence and violence. Another time he would not take the dew from the tip of the grass, the reason for his buoyancy of mood. Vehemence of nature and heroic valor, what with the feat and fury and rage upon him, he stepped over the fort outside and aligned at the door of the hall. His 2 footprints are in the flag on the floor of the hold, in the spot where the royal entrance was. Thereafter he entered the house and heaved a sigh. And Mian's daughter, the bland wife of Kuro, spoke. Truly not the sign of dishonor, but a victor's sigh of triumph. The daughter of the king of the Isle of Men and Figa, i.e. the Bethlehem, knew full well of Cu Chulainn's evil plight that night. They were not long where they beheld Chokro coming towards them, carrying into them standard 3 nines slain by Cu Chulainn, along with their heads that and of the monster. But the heads of them off his breast on the floor, they stood and spoke. The girlie whose one night's trophies of these is fit to lad watch the king's stronghold forever. The champion's potion over which you have fallen out with the gallant Luce of Erin truly belongs to Cu Chulainn, the bravest of them, were he here would not match him in number of trophies. Choro's verdict upon them was, the champion's portion be to Cu Chulainn, with the sovereignty of valor over all Gal, and his wife pursuance on entering the mead hall before all other ladies of Ulster. And the value of 7 bonds matings in gold and silver Choro gave Cu Chulainn in reward for his one night's performance. The 3 heroes of Ulster straightway bade Choro farewell and kept on until they were seated in Imamecca before the day closed. When the waiters came to deal and divide, they took the champion's portion with its share of ale out of the distribution that they might have a part. Indeed, sure are we, said Dog Chieftain. You think not tonight contending for the champion's portion? Perhaps the man you sought out is undertaken to pass judgment. Whereupon the other folk took a Cullen. The champion's portion was not assigned to one of you in preference to the other. As to Cheru's judgment upon thee three, thou wilt did he conclude to Cuchulainn upon their arriving at Emmen. Cuchulainn then declared that he by no means conveyed the winning of it, for loss hence resulting to the winner would be on the par with the profit he got from it. The championship was therefore not fully assigned until the advent of the Champions' Covenant in Emmen, which follows. One day, as the Ulstermen were in Mecca, fatigued after the gathering of games, the Conco Baron Fergus MacRogue, with the Ulster nobles as well, proceeded from the playing field outside and seated themselves in Rabresh Colcaber near Cuchulainn, nor Conan the Victorious nor Logar the Triumphant were there that night. But the host of Ulster heroes were there, and they were seated. And it being eventide and the day dawning towards close, they saw a big uncouth fellow, exceeding ugliness, drawing them nigh the hill. Then it seemed as if none of the Ulstermen could reach half his height. Horrible and ugly was the declared disguise. Next his skin he wore an old hide of dark dung, and mantle around him, over him a great speeding club tree, branch the sides of a winter shed under which 30 bullocks could find shelter. Ravenous yellow eyes he had, protruding from his head, each of the twin size of an ox fat. Each finger was as thick as the person's wrist, and in his left hand he carried a stalk, a burden of 20 yoke of oxen, and in his right hand was an axe, weighing thrice 50 glowing molten masses of metal. Its handle will require a yoke of 6 moved to move it. Its sharpness, such as it is, would lop off the hairs, the wind blowing against its edge. In that guise he went and stood by the folk beam beside the fire. Is the hall lacking room for you, said Dog Chaffletongue to the unclothed copper, that ye no find other place than by the fork beam, unless thee wish to be illuminated to the house. Only sooner will a blaze be thy house than the brightness of thy household. Whatever property may be mine, you will agree that no matter how big I am, the household will not be lightened, while the hall will not be burned. That, however, is not my sole function. I have others, but neither Erin, nor Alba, nor Europe, nor Africa, nor Asia, including Greek Sasha Isles and Glades and Pillars of Hercules and Bragan's Tower, have I accomplished the quest on which I have come, nor man to do me fair play regarding it. Since the Ulstermen have exiled all the peoples of the lands in strength, prowess, and valor, in rank, multiplicity, and dignity, in truth, the generosity of worth is among you the giant bone I ask. In truth, it is not just the honor of the province be carried off, said Fergus MacRogue, because one man who falls in keeping his word of honor, death certainly is not with neither of them to you. It is not I shun it. Make thy quest known to us, then, said Fergus. Only if fair play is offered me, I will tell it. It is right to give fair play, said Scasher, son of Ale, for it is not seemingly for great people to break mutual covenant over an unknown individual. It seems to us foremost that if you at last find a person who such seeks, you will find him here. Colcaber I put aside, he said, for the sake of sovereignty, and Fergus MacRogue also on account of his like privilege. Those two expected come whencever you were, my dare, and I may cut off his head tonight, be mine tomorrow. Sure then there was no warrior here after the two. By my troth there was at that moment, cried Mortimer MacRogue, as he sprang forth in the hall, the strength of movement was out his side, and 100 warriors each armed, having his might of 100 centaurs, Bend down, Bathrush, said Murmur, that I may cut off thy head tonight. Thou cut off mine tomorrow. Were that the object of my quest, I could get it anywhere, said Bathrush. Let us act according to our covenant. I too cut off your head tonight, to avenge it tomorrow night. By my people's gods, death is thus for thy no pleasant prospect should a man killed tonight attack thee on the morrow. It's given thee alone if thou hast the power to being killed night after night to avenge it the next day. Truly I will carry what you say as a body agree upon the way of counsel, strange as it may seem to you, said Backlash. He then pledged the other to keep his troth and condition and fulfilling his tryst on the morrow. When that Murmur took an axe from Bashir's hand, 7 feet apart were his 2 angles. Then Bashir put his neck across the block. Murmur dealt a blow across it with the axe until it stood in the block beneath and cutting off the head so that it lay at the base of the folk beam in the house and filled with blood. Straightway the boss rose and recovered himself and collapsed his head, blocking his ass the bust, and made his exit from the hall. With the blood screaming from his neck, it filled the red branch on every side. Great was the people's horror, wondering at the marvel that appeared to him. By my people's gods, said Dublin Comfort, if Briceiu, having been killed tonight, come back tomorrow, he will not leave a man alive in Ulster. The following night, he returned. And Murmur struck him, and then Bashir began to urge his pact with Murmur. Truly it is not right, Murmur, not to fulfill his covenant with me. That night, however, Logo the Triumphant was present. Who of the warriors a contest of that the Ulster's portion be carried out a covenant with me tonight? Where is Logo the Triumphant, he said. Here, said Logo. He pledged him to, yet Logo did not keep his arrangement. The back returned on the morrow, and summarily pledged Conall Carrack, who came not as he had sworn. The 4th night the back returned, and fierce and furious was he. All the ladies of Ulster came that night to see the strange marvel that had come to the red branch. That night Cu Chulainn was there also. Then the Bashir began to unbride him. Ye men of Ulster, your valour and your powers are gone. Your warriors greatly covenant the champion's portion, yet are unable to contest it. Where is a mad fellow called Cu Chulainn? I would like to know whether his word is better than the others. No covenant do I desire with you, said Cu Chulainn. Like that is, O wretched fly, great dost thou fear to die. Whereupon Cu Chulainn sprang towards him and dealt him a blow with an axe and hurled his head to the top of the rafters on the red branch until the whole hall shook. Cu Chulainn then caught up the head and gave it a blow with the axe and smashed it. Thereafter, the Bashirs rose up. On the morrow, the Ulstermen were watching Cu Chulainn to see whether he would shirk the breach and other heroes had done. As Cu Chulainn was awaiting the Bashirs, they saw that great dejection seized him. It would have been fitting if they had slung his dirge, but they felt sure that his life would last only until the Bashirs came. Then said Cu Chulainn with shame to Concobar, Thou shalt not go until my pledge to the Bashir is fulfilled, for death awaits me, and I would rather have death with honour. Then they were this day closing, they saw the Bashir approaching. Where is Cu Chulainn? He said. Here I am, he replied. Thou art dull of speech tonight? Unhappy one, greatly thou fear to die? Yet thou great your fear death would not have been shrieked. Therefore Chulainn stretched his neck across the block, which was such size that his neck reached but halfway. Stretch out thy neck, you wretch, cried Bashir. Thou art keeping me in torment, said Cu Chulainn. Dispatch me quickly. Last night, my Toth, I tormented thee not. Very, I swear that if thou torment me, I will make myself as long as a crane above you. I cannot slay thee, said the Bashir. What's with the shortness of your neck and your side the size of the block? Then Cu Chulainn stretched out his neck so that the warrior's foot should be fitted between the two ribs. His neck and stretched until his head reached the other side of the block. The bachelors raised an axe until it reached the roof of the tree of the house. The creaking of an old hide was about him, and crashing of the axe, both arms being raised aloft with might. Whereas a loud noise would tempest boss the night of storm, down it came on his neck, its blunt side below, all the nobles of Ulster gazing upon them. Cu Chulainn, arise! Of the warriors of Ulster and Erin, no matter their mantle, none is found to compare with thee in valour, bravery, and truthfulness. The sovereignty of the heroes of Erin to thee from this hour forth, and the champion's portion undisputed, and to thy wife the processions will always be of the ladies of the Ulster of the Mead Hall, and whoever shall lay wager against thee from now on, as my tribe swear, I swear all his life he will be in danger. Then the backlash vanished. It was Chulric MacDirry who, in that guise, had come to fulfill the promise he had given to Cu Chulainn.